And we're back for another episode of Standpoint. I'm Gabe Groisman, and we're just coming off Independence Day weekend. This last week's episode, we took a break from politics. We took a break from all the conflicts around the world, and we really just took a moment to salute our troops, our servicemen and women, millions of them serving all over the world to keep us safe. Our guest this week is actually it's a perfect transition because we are going to dive deep into politics, into presidential politics with former Congressman Lee Zeldin. But he is also, first, I just wanted to recognize his service. He served in the U.S. Army. He still serves today in reserves. I think his rank today, if I'm not mistaken, is lieutenant colonel. If that's not the current rank, you got to tell me so I don't disrespect that in any way, shape, or form. But Lee Zeldin, as everybody knows, was a state senator in New York for a couple years, I think 4 years, then served in the first district for the first district of New York in U.S. Congress. He was one of, I think, 2 Jewish members of Congress on the Republican side, was a powerhouse when he was there. And then he really made his mark when he ran for governor of New York. He came up just a little short, but he got more votes on the Republican side than anyone in 52 years in the state of New York. Lots of down ballot wins as a result of his push. And we all know his career is not over. Today he's a Republican strategist. People turn to him to understand what's happening in the party. Does a lot with charities and nonprofits, and also with his own consulting and strategy firm. So Lee Zeldin, thanks so much and for joining us.
That's great to be with you, Gabe.
So, Lee, first of all, I want you to take me around. I'll do your introductions whenever you want. I'm a big fan. So, first of all, how was your 4th of July?
It was good. I look forward to being able to celebrate Independence Day events for years to come, where hopefully our country is going to be heading in a better direction than it is at the moment. I still believe that we live in the greatest country in the history of the world. I'm someone who believes that American exceptionalism is nothing to ever apologize for. And I greatly appreciate all the sacrifice that makes this moment, this life that we live in this country possible. The freedoms, the liberties, the cost, the blood over years and generations. So it's a country that's still worth fighting and dying for. And I'm optimistic about the future as long as we work very hard, taking nothing for granted to make sure that our country gets back on track.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually think that in moments like this is where you can test the greatness of our country and the systems that the founders put in place. Because when things are going well, everything works well, right? It's like my investment portfolio last year did great because the market did well, or better than the year before at least, right? So everybody's a genius in an up market. But now is where you can really see and test our systems. And so far they're working well. Supreme Court's decision last week, I think, helped prove that, right? To try to rein in some of the overreach, but you're right. It takes a lot of work, and we can't avoid the number one topic of the day on the presidential election, which is what's the story with Biden, if he's going to run, if he's going to continue to run. Today we're filming. It's Monday. He just sent a letter to members of Congress saying that he's staying in. What are your thoughts on it?
President Biden's not going to get any sharper as November 5th gets closer. It is a certainty that we will continue to witness more gaffes, more erosion of faculties and capabilities. I want to see the President of the United States at any moment of my lifetime being strong, being sharp, being prepared, alert. And unfortunately, right now in 2024, we have a President of the United States who has had his age very much catch up to him. Age is just a number. The issue with President Biden, to me, isn't that he's 81 years old. It's that he has suffered so much in the last few years. And to think that he's capable of serving 4 more years in the White House, I think is unrealistic. I think it's irresponsible. And you have to significantly place party above country and prioritize loyalty to a person above loyalty to this nation, to be able to, with a straight face, say that President Biden should stay in office for 4 more years. The fact is, it's time for him to move on, to enjoy retirement or whatever else is in front of him for the time that he has left, and spend time with his family. But for this country, as we see a border that is unsecure, we have seen energy independence get eroded, prosperity opportunities get lost. We see crime rising on streets, and in many respects, due to policies that have been put in place by Democrats. I think that American voters, whether you're right, left, center, Republican, Democrat, Independent, we all need to be uniting as Americans to prioritize these issues above blind partisan loyalty. And as we just mentioned a couple minutes ago, is get our country back on track.
Yeah, well, let's break that down a little bit. I think the most important point that you make out of all of them when we're talking about the president's cognitive abilities, everybody's talking about his performance in the debate, or whether, he said, well, I'm gonna rectify it with a few interviews and a few visits to churches, which we knew wouldn't happen. But even if he did, even if he would have bounced back and he looked better, the real relevant question isn't how is he today? The question is, can he be president for the next 4.5 years? And I think anybody on any side of the political aisle and any part of the political spectrum will answer that question in the negative. They'll know that he cannot be high functioning as a president for the next 4.5 years, which makes this whole thing kind of crazy. But I think it actually might play against Trump in a sense, because Trump, usually when an incumbent is running, he's running on his record, and it's a thumbs up or thumbs down on the incumbent's record. And Biden's record is dismal. You went through some of it, right? Immigration, economy, the world is on fire, et cetera. And you can keep going down the list. But now suddenly the discussion isn't about any of those things, right? It's only about who is more with it, if it's Trump or Biden. Do you think Trump needs to really try to focus more on these issues, or do you think he'll do better focusing on the negatives of Biden's cognitive state?
These are all issues that are important to voters. I mean, they want a president who's up for the job. But we also need a president who is going to be focused on solutions to secure our border, make our streets safe, to make life more prosperous, to preserve freedom, to improve education. So if I'm President Trump, I'm out there running for governor or Senate or Congress, whoever is out there running for any of these offices anywhere in America, the message should be to try to win these elections, not primarily based on what you're against, but what you're for. And I think that a lot of the votes that are actually still up for grabs right now amongst independent-minded voters who are actually still undecided at this moment is that they want to hear what you are going to do to make their life better, to make this country better. That, I think, is the most important winning message.
Yeah, absolutely. And Trump's really done a good job, at least in the last few weeks, specifically on being on point, even at the debate. Instead of jumping on Biden, he'd kind of let Biden show himself and focus on the issues otherwise. Look, a big thing that's happening this week is you're seeing the Democratic Party start to really show a big divide as to where people are on Biden. We see people on Face the Nation. They don't want to say the words, but they're saying Biden needs to really reevaluate whether he wants to run. We know what they're saying. They're putting together letters to the president to try to pressure him. We know that the campaign itself, the donors, that every single day there's articles about donors walking away. What do you make of this divide within the Democratic Party?
Listen, it's impossible to defend President Biden with a straight face. The people who are defending President Biden at this point are folks who are just wanting to be loyal to the person above all else, and it's just so obvious. There's a strategy that was followed for months, if not years, where people who are loyal to President Biden were just trying to make believe like it was all just a cheap fake. Anytime you saw President Biden falling down steps, up steps, on stages, off bikes, reading words like end of sentence, period, off of a teleprompter, stumbling on what he's reading, shaking empty air, or not finding his way off stage. Every single time we're being told as Americans, we shouldn't believe what we're seeing with our own eyes. But it's reached the point now with that debate where it's indefensible. And it confirmed what the rest of us were saying was so obvious to us. I mean, listen, I saw this firsthand before he was even elected in 2020, before he even got sworn into office. I was at events with him where he was in my district, and this was at the very beginning of his presidential campaign in 2019, where he was reading off of a prepared script, and he was doing fine off of the prepared remarks. But there were 2 or 3 times where he would come off the remarks and start ad-libbing, And the moment that he would start ad-libbing, he instantly completely lost where he was. And it was one of those moments like, whoa, if this guy's elected president, then who's going to be the president? And I would ask this question during the campaign in 2020, and it wasn't a rhetorical question. It wasn't a question that somebody should just smirk or laugh off with a non-answer. I wanted to know, because clearly, if this guy was elected president, he was not going to be in charge. There was going to be other people around him running the show, and I think that that's been evident to a lot of Americans as well. And we still haven't gotten an answer. We could just speculate of just how much power an Anthony Blinken or a Ron Klain or a Susan Rice, how much power they have in running the show behind the scenes. But at this point, you look at 2024 versus 2020, and I know how much he had deteriorated even in those clips in 2020. And he's gotten that much worse in 4 years. I think President Trump might have been the only person who we did not see age over the course of a term in the White House. Every single other person in my lifetime that I've watched, whether it's been a Republican president or a Democratic president, it seems like when they leave 4 years or 8 years later, they've aged like 15 or 20 years. President Trump, somehow, you look at him today, and it's been 4 more years. And he, in some of these videos and pictures, looked younger than he was when he was campaigning in 2016. And he's able to work these schedules where he could do multiple rallies in different states every single day, day after day. And I'm confident that he's going to be able to keep up that pace. I don't know when he sleeps. I don't know how he does it. And it's one thing we can ask ourselves, gosh, when we're his age, we hope to have that kind of energy. Honestly, for the rest of us, whether you're 20 or 30 or 40, the rest of us don't even have that level of energy today compared to what we're witnessing him do now, even though he's in his 70s.
Yeah, I mean, Trump, I think the biggest difference, someone comes from the private sector who's working hard 12-hour plus days every day for the last several decades. They move into the presidency. Yes, it's more stressful, but it's the same amount of hours, let's say, or even, it's in that same realm versus someone who was a senator, which is everybody knows it's as busy as you want it to be when you're a senator, right? You can have a very busy schedule like some guys that are out there, and you can also just show up and vote and give speeches when you want to, right? And there's that level, and everyone knows kind of the life Biden had as a senator. It's nothing like this, and definitely vice president was nothing like this versus a Trump. But yeah, it is incredible how his energy is still up there. He's still sharp. I think the left went crazy when he misspoke on the last name instead of Johnson or Jackson. He misspoke on that. I think I do that 10 to 15 times a day, and I'm 43 years old, right? So that's not the sign of any cognitive decline. That's obvious. But look, what does Trump need to focus on to win? In the midterms, we thought we had a good chance on the Republican side to make some big differences, to bring home some big wins. Candidates matter. We didn't have the best candidates, but there's definitely things that need to change. What does Trump and the Republican Party have to do to win big in November?
Listen, when you're running for president of the United States, these campaigns are complex. You have to raise a lot of money. You have to execute strategies in targeted states. The map changes, issues change. But there's one thing that stands out above all else to directly answer your question: mechanics. The mechanics of campaigning. If it's a state that's legalized ballot harvesting, you need to do ballot harvesting better than the Democrats and make them regret legalizing it in the first place. If you're in a state, and that, like I think of Nevada, when I give that example, we lost a Senate seat in 2022 when a snowstorm hit the Reno area. Adam Laxalt was almost the United States senator, but that impacted turnout. I think of Pennsylvania, where they've legalized universal mail-in balloting. If we don't lean into universal mail-in balloting where it is legal in Pennsylvania, even if we disagree with legalizing it elsewhere, the fact is it is the law there. And if we don't lean into it, we will lose the election before November 5th even hits. We will wake up on November 5th and Pennsylvania will already be lost. The Electoral College votes, a key Senate race where we can flip a Senate seat, competitive House seats. We need poll workers to step up. We need attorneys to be willing to dedicate their time towards helping towards making sure that we have a good election. There's accountability and there's ballot curing, and we're going to court if necessary. We're bringing a lawsuit beforehand if necessary. There's so much that needs to get done on the mechanics of a campaign. And we just saw in the UK where the left was able to win big in their election. We just saw it out of France, where the far left was able to win the most amount of seats in parliament.
Scary.
What is happening right now is an internal civil war inside the Democratic Party. It's a moment where they are like attempting a coup of their own president, the leader of their own party. But I'll tell you, whether it ends up being Joe Biden as the nominee, Kamala Harris, or someone else, they are going to feel an urgency coming out of that process when they have a nominee to try to make up for lost time. And they are going to lean more into the mechanics than ever. And they will take nothing for granted. That's the assumption that we have to be operating off of on our end. And you know what? If you don't do it, if you use your optimism as an excuse for complacency, you're going to wake up on November 6th and say, gosh, I guess we should have tried a little bit harder. I would say the best thing to do is assume that any poll, whether it shows you up or down, just take it as being down. No matter what happens on any day, use it as a reason, a motivation to work harder the next day.
Yeah, that's a big issue that I'm seeing. Right, what you're talking about at the end. I think the gloating right now within the party worries me because, like you said, these elections are complicated. They're won by small districts and swing states. It's not by national sentiment or these national polls that you see floating around at all. And the Democrats have always been better at getting out the vote in these places. So, that's absolutely a big issue. But the DNC is coming up. The Democratic National Convention is coming up in a month or so. That's really when we're going to find out who the presidential nominee is going to be. Biden yesterday, and again, we're filming this on Monday. So on Sunday, he came out and said, or earlier today, he came out and said, challenge me at the convention to his own party. So we're going to see that sort of civil war that you're talking about within the Democratic Party. First of all, with Biden, with what happens with Biden, but also anyone who's focused on the details of the party. When you're talking about the Democratic platform, there's a whole war going on which direction the party's going. Is it going to continue to take a deep dive off of the left crazy train, or is it going to somehow come back into moderation? Unfortunately, the moderate forces are much smaller in number than the far left crazy forces. But we're going to see that come back and forth. And I know there's a lot of, I have some friends in Congress on the Democratic side. They're waiting to see what the platform's going to be. They're freaking out about it, that they're going to lose what they think is lose their party. But the fallout from that's going to be the top of the ticket, which is what's going to happen with Biden. Do you see sort of your prediction Biden stays in after the DNC?
Most likely. If you gave me $1, I have to put it down somewhere. I'm going to put it down on him being the nominee. But listen, if you gave me 2, maybe I'd start hedging a bit because anything's possible in this moment. The momentum to take out Joe Biden within the Democratic Party grows every single day. It grows every hour now of every single day. Now, the Democratic Party isn't looking to nominate somebody more moderate than Joe Biden. So the Democratic Party, if they were to replace Biden, if it's Kamala Harris, she's further to the left. I mean, when Joe Biden picked Kamala Harris to be his vice president, he was picking somebody who was not going to be able to upstage Joe Biden as president. There were very few options of Joe Biden across America of picking somebody who would be unable to upstage Joe Biden. But he found one. And for the Democratic Party coming out of this process to pick somebody who's further to the left isn't something that's going to be sending a strong message to all of those people in the Senate. And I'll say this whole process has vindicated Dean Phillips in a way. He launched his campaign to be the Democratic nominee, and he was pushed out of the party, really. I mean, he was ostracized, and no one wanted to talk to him anymore. And he was issuing a warning shot. And he was trying to say nice things. He understands that this is the president of the country. It's the leader of his party. But he realized we just can't actually nominate him. And now fast forward, it turns out that a lot of people inside the Democratic Party are admitting Dean Phillips was right all along.
Yeah, he was just saying things that everyone was afraid to say for whatever reason. But since we're focusing on the vice president, Trump hasn't picked his vice president yet. There's lots of discussion internally on who he's going to pick. Everyone has conjecture. Everyone's putting their proverbial dollar down on their different candidates. But before we speak about specific candidates, Do you think, in a traditional sense, that Trump should be picking someone that can help him in a swing state like Tim Scott for South Carolina, or in a specific demographic of voters, or is he really looking for? Should he be looking for someone that will fill a role for him as president?
First and foremost, I know that President Trump is looking for someone who is capable of being the president. And he's right for feeling as strongly as he does about that trait. And really, that is the right answer. There was this push in 2020 when Joe Biden was picking a nominee for vice president, where it was picking somebody based off of gender or skin color or some of these other biographical, demographical traits. And for President Trump, he's looking to pick somebody who he believes is most qualified to be the president of the United States. I think that President Trump believes that he is the person who is going to be determining mostly whether or not his ticket is going to be able to win a swing state. And he's right. I mean, at the end of the day, it is President Trump who is the person at the top of the ticket with the most amount of influence to decide whether or not he's able to win a state. Chemistry is important, yes. There's certain aspects of being vice president where maybe President Trump looks at particular issues and leadership style and work ethic and more as traits to be considered. But first and foremost, I think President Trump is absolutely right in that number one trait of, if that person has to step in and be president, is he or she the person who's most qualified?
Yeah, so the names that are being thrown around, which no one really knows, right? It could be absolutely anybody, but the names being thrown around are Tim Scott from South Carolina, Doug Burgum from North Dakota. We've heard J.D. Vance from Ohio. Yesterday, Lindsey Graham was on national television speaking about how it should be the governor of Virginia. So, I mean, it's really there's all these names being thrown out. Like you're saying, they're all people who can fill the role. I think JD's a great guy, super smart. He's the youngest of the bunch. Definitely has the intellect to be there with him. He can go toe to toe, I think, with absolutely anybody. They're all good choices from my perspective. Which do you think is the best choice? Are you comfortable talking about that?
Well, my favorite would be whoever President Trump picks as his favorite. Honestly. And I we'll see what President Trump, when President Trump decides to make this announcement. We'll have a lot of time to be able to talk about his pick. We'll be able to hopefully see a vice presidential debate. And I'm confident all of the names that you just mentioned, if they're there at a debate with Kamala Harris, would be able to do very well against her, right? You're mentioning J.D. Vance. I saw this CNN interview with Caitlin Collins where she's going after him and he's punching back, and then she is trying to come over the top, and he was defending himself and staying on offense. And I would say that no matter who the pick is, to be able to watch a clip like that, gain inspiration, because what we need is a good fighter, a good messenger, somebody who's smart and substantive, and to be able to connect in a way, not just in the audience that's inside of an echo chamber where you're trying to bring out conservatives with conservative messaging. I would love to see a vice presidential pick who is looking for that opportunity to get into the cities, talk to longtime Democratic voters about issues that are very important to them. And we saw it in our race for governor in 2022, where we were able to win the Dominican vote and the Asian American vote and the Orthodox Jewish vote and other longtime Democrat constituencies voting for us, even though they were so overwhelmingly Democrat. I would love to see that trait and showing up on CNN and some of these other networks, and to face that tough question and to be able to punch back in a way that is effective and substantive and still likable. And to be able to connect with that audience of the independent-minded voter, because of course there's people tuning in who will never vote for President Trump. You're not going to be able to change their mind. You're not speaking just to these people. There are so many people who are tuning in on these stations where their vote is up for grabs, I would love for somebody to be able to communicate effectively directly to them.
Yeah, by the way, watching J.D. Vance, it's like a masterclass with the media because he punches back, but in a very calm way. And he just kind of looks at the camera and in a calm way responds very directly. He doesn't take the premises that he's given just for granted. He pushes back on all of them. And in a way that the interviewer ends up looking like the crazy person, which usually they are, just trying to get a rise out of their guests, which is a bizarre dynamic that we have in today's media. But listen, let's just turn to an issue I know is important to both of us, which has to do with the Middle East and Israel. There's been a big change from President Biden the first month or so after the war, said all the right things, made a visit to Israel. But ever since then, I'm sure you'd agree, it's sort of been eroding, let's say. His support for Israel has been eroding. He talks out of both sides of his mouth. One day he'll give a speech for the Jewish community and for Israel, and then the next day he'll fly to Michigan and do the exact opposite, thinking somehow that no one's gonna figure it out, that he's talking out of both sides of his mouth. We know he's delaying weapon delivery to Israel as well. That's something that's been played out in the media. I think all the listeners here know about that. But can you talk a little bit about, from your perspective and your experience, how things can be different under President Trump again? We all know how great he was last time, but there's concern when I talk to people that care about this issue. They'll say to me, well, he was great last time, but this time he's got nothing to lose. And, now he has immunity, he could do whatever he wants, which we know isn't fully the case. What are your feelings on how Trump and the Trump administration would handle not just Israel, but the whole Middle East?
President Trump already proved his effectiveness when he was there for 4 years, not starting any new wars. He was ending wars. He was eliminating people like Qasem Soleimani and others from the battlefield. He was strengthening relationships with allies. He was treating adversaries as adversaries and understanding that adversaries do not respect weakness. They respect strength. My theory of approaching foreign policy is consistent, where I also believe you can't be silent, not because you want war, but because you want to prevent it. You have to have the military option on the table, not because you want to use it, but because you don't want to have to use it, and because you want the other instruments of national power to be strong. We saw President Trump withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal, eliminate the ISIS caliphate, move the embassy in Israel to Jerusalem, sign the Taylor Force Act into law, recognize Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, get the Abraham Accords off of the ground and launched very successfully. We saw it from one issue to the next overseas, but also here at home. Signed an executive order that for a long time was an idea that had support in Washington, but never became a reality, to combat anti-Semitism and leverage federal tax dollars on college campuses. We have a threat that we are facing in this election. We're on the other side. There are people who are campaigning against us who view October 7th as a rallying cry. They are taking over the Democratic Party like a cancer. They are winning powerful seats in office. And as you just pointed out, they are impacting the President of the United States, where the president might say the right thing at one moment on one day, but implementing policies in the next breath, in the next moment, the next opportunity, that panders to these people to try to win a vote in Michigan. And it's all about elections, domestic politics. It's about power and perks and not wanting to lose on November 5th. What is most important here is to have a president of the United States who understands foreign policy and effectiveness, not starting new wars, but ending them, treating friends as friends and adversaries as adversaries, who has a foreign policy that we can go to sleep at night knowing that tomorrow we have a good chance of being safer than we were today, as opposed to vice versa. A border that will be more secure tomorrow than it is today. A country that is more prosperous tomorrow than it is today. When President Trump talks about making America great again, it is not a slogan. It is not something that is meaningless to try to get another vote or two. It is really a principle that should be uniting all of us as Americans to want to make this great country greater. And I sure hope President Trump has that opportunity with 4 more years. He deserves it. Most importantly, the country deserves it.
Yeah, as do I. And the last point I'll make, if we just look at the videos of the far left's win in France over this past weekend, you see there's more Palestinian flags flying there in the square than French flags. Those who stand with Hamas against Israel are also anti-France, they're anti-West, they're anti-America. Here we saw it on Independence Day weekend, this past weekend, with marches all over our country, burning American flags instead of waving American flags. Now, those are the people who are standing against the West, against Israel, against the United States. And I think it's important for us to always clarify which way's up and which way's down. These days, we have to make those simple distinctions. But anyways, with that, Lee, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate all the work that you do. And I know this is going to be an interesting couple months for those of us who love politics, just kind of going through it, and hope to get the chance to talk to you again before November.
I look forward to it. It's great being with you, Gabe. Take care.
Thanks so much, everyone. Please make sure to like, subscribe, share, and do all the great things you do to support podcasts like mine. And I'll see you next time.